time and advocacy strategically, as Doug Brinkley just mentioned, that there are many extreme radical and indeed, according to many courts, unlawful activities by this White House. We actually cover that in the news frequently. But there's also a learning curve on this process, which, however controversial, is not illegal. This is not the abuse of federal forces or some other controversy we've covered. And it seems that in comparison to term one, they are more organized. And from what we can tell, the president is more engaged when called upon to deal with legislating something he's never shown a great personal interest in.
Yeah, they have definitely learned, and they have learned when the president should engage with directly with members of the House or the Senate. He's clearly learned how to do that. He's learned what buttons to push. They use both carrots and sticks. It was a lot of carrots with Murkowski, a lot of benefits for Alaska, a lot of sticks with some others, and they've learned that there are a few votes that they can just sort of write off. They weren't going to get Rand Paul in the Senate. They're not going to get Massey. Massey is always going to be a problem in the House, but they've learned a lot, and I agree with Doug. You have to say Mike Johnson is a much more effective Speaker of the House than certainly I expected him to be, and then I think almost everyone expected him to be. He is getting results. The president wants it passed. He gets it passed.
Yeah, and he's proven to be a little bit like Bruce Lee, where you have to be water first. Some people criticize that and say, oh, you have no firm position. I don't know what you think about anything. We can have that debate. But legislatively, he's done that approach, and that's different than, McCarthy was in these spats. They may not have been of his choosing, but he couldn't get out from under them. He was in public, open warfare with what were admittedly difficult members of the caucus. Matt Gaetz no longer there. But he and Boehner and Paul Ryan before them would have these rolling public battles with those flanks. And Johnson, partly because you don't, I say it not with any disrespect, deliberately not trashing him, but you don't really know where he is on these things. And then sooner or later, he tries to land the plane. It's sort of the job. I mean, that's what LBJ did on a very different legislative agenda, one for civil rights and a fair deal. Our guests stay. I want to point out on the substance, we talked about the maneuvering, but this budget, $1 trillion out of Medicaid, $150 billion from Medicare and Obamacare, 10 to 12 million people booted off coverage. And that is a direct, obvious breaking of Donald Trump's vow, meaning what he said before, if he knew he was going to do this, were outright lies, including to his own supporters.
Can you guarantee that Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security will not be touched?
Yeah, I mean, I have said it so many times. We're not going to touch it.
We will not cut Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid benefits.
We're not cutting Medicaid, we're not cutting Medicare, and we're not cutting Social Security.
So what do I tell 663,000 people in 2 years or 3 years when President Trump breaks his promise by pushing them off of Medicaid?
The last voice, one of the Republican defectors, Doug Brinkley, it's very clear there that Donald Trump's mastery of PR and politics is these are widely unpopular plans, including on the right. So he broke a promise or was lying the whole time. How important is that as we live in an era where people want to retreat to their own spin or facts? But the fact is he broke that vow.
It's going to matter when people get hurt. All economies go up and down, and it's going to depend on Donald Trump's fate or the fate of 2026 and what our economy does. But what's shocking to me is that Trump is the one carrying out the sledgehammer to the Great Society of Lyndon Johnson, going after really Medicaid, Medicare, PBS, NPR, Wild and Scenic Rivers, after school programs, going after, so-called food stamp programs, as they used to be called. He's the one. He's the avenger.
Republicans are admitting Trump staff people, because again, that's how we see senators and Congress people. They are admitting the bill they voted for was bad. They are admitting it. I'm not going to give it's not to give them credit, being like, oh, brave Republican, hates bill, votes for it 68 minutes later. But they said it. They've said it. And I'm going to come back with a shocking personal anecdote from an American that really underscores this. But fundamentally, they admitted it. This bill is bad. They said it. They said it in public. They said it in private. They said it on the floor. They said it to the media. They've admitted what they did is they voted for their real constituents. Billionaires, multi-millionaires, and Donald Trump. That's the constituency for every Republican, or 99% of Republicans in Congress, and not you, the people. And
Medicaid paid for, at the beginning, the rest of that pregnancy, and it paid for his birth and for his first 2 open heart surgeries. I see every single day kids whose entire lives at home with their families is funded by Medicaid. Private insurance only does so much, if you even have it.
That was Allison Chandra. She's the mother who spoke to us earlier this week about how Trump's mega bill would impact her and her family. According to the Congressional Budget Office, millions are expected to lose their health care now that Congress has passed the bill with cuts to Medicaid. And Allison joins us now. She's a pediatric nurse whose son Ethan has a rare genetic disorder and relies on Medicaid for treatment. Allison, I do want to talk to you as a medical professional, but first I want to talk to you as a mother. Now that this bill has passed, what is the thing you're most concerned about losing access to?
I told myself I wasn't going to cry about this. It's all so fresh. I just sat with my kids and watched this vote. Watched Congress, who has completely abdicated their moral high ground, who has no courage to do right by our disabled children. I'm not worried as much for my son right now because he doesn't rely on Medicaid anymore. I am worried about the millions of kids across this country who do. Kids like the patients that I care for. I was just at one of my patients' houses last night. I was finishing up my charting this morning while I was watching them debate whether or not Medicaid's even going to still be around for me to be able to provide her the care in her home that keeps her with her family.
Can you talk to us about, you said your son doesn't rely on it so much anymore, but he has in the past, and what it's meant for your family to be able to have the support of Medicaid, and if you can just give us some of the specifics of things it provides for your patients, including the one you were just talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So Medicaid, we had no income, my husband and I, when I got Ethan's diagnosis prenatally. We had been volunteering for nearly 6 years overseas, and Medicaid is what allowed us to confidently move forward in choosing life for him. And that life has not been easy. Medicaid paid for a difficult birth. It paid for his first 2 open heart surgeries. We're about to mark the anniversary of the first one that happened 6 days after he was born. It paid for all of that. And we were able to transition into private insurance. And we don't rely on Medicaid right now, but a lot of the families, most of the families in the disability world that I'm connected to, rely on Medicaid for things like feeding supplies, incontinence supplies, medications, wheelchairs. The list is endless. It's everything that a disabled child needs to thrive in their lives. Medicaid pays for that. Medicaid makes that possible.
All those little things, anybody who's ever had surgery know they all add up so quickly, and so much of it is not normally covered. And for Medicaid to cover that, I would imagine makes such a difference. When you're dealing with parents who are making these catastrophically difficult, heartbreaking decisions for their child's health care, when you were dealing with these decisions yourself, what kind of a burden does it compound to then have to worry about how you're going to pay for it? Should that be something that someone with a sick child has to worry about in America in this day and age?
No, and it's unconscionable, honestly. When I said we were volunteering overseas in some of the poorest nations in the world. So I've seen firsthand what lack of access to healthcare looks like, the way it compounds disease, and it makes things so much worse. And to think that we're fighting that same fight here in the richest country in the world, that's a moral failure.
Republicans and Democrats alike are going to be feeling the impact of this bill before then, and enough to maybe change hearts and minds before they go to the polls.
Well, delayed cuts is actually not how the economy works. It's not how healthcare works. It's not how the world works. If you're running a large business, if you're running a hospital, if you're running a healthcare system, and you know that, you know, in a year or 18 months, a service you're providing, a hospital that you're running, a healthcare group that you're running is no longer going to be solvent, are you waiting around for that to take effect? No, you're not. This has been a massive signal to the market, to the healthcare industry, to businesses across the country about what's coming, and they are going to immediately start responding to that. So unfortunately, the pain is going to be real, and it's going to come much sooner than anyone expects. And that's why, you know, Democrats are standing by to stand in the breach and provide whatever support we can to our constituents. And then we're going to go and we're going to win, and we're going to try to fix this.
You saw we had those 2 Republican nay votes, but ultimately, of course, the bill did pass. But there was a lot of opposition to this bill, especially among those self-identified fiscal conservatives. Even the Freedom Caucus had some issues with it. Why do you think they ultimately fell in line? Is the fear of repercussions from Donald Trump so great that it basically makes it untenable for almost any Republican to stand up to his agenda at this point?
Yes. Yes, that's exactly what's happening here. Right? You don't have to take my word for it about this bill. Numerous Republicans said it was going to blow open our national debt. Numerous Republicans said, you know, just hours ago, actually, just said this is going to take health care away from millions of people. Numerous Republicans pushed back on the cuts to the energy subsidies for renewable energy production. Numerous people said this is a awful, horrible bill, and they wouldn't support it until Donald Trump told them to. And actually, just look at their statements, too, right? Look at the things they've tweeted out. Look at the statements they've made. You know, a bunch of my colleagues have said things like, I'll do anything for Donald Trump. I will, you know, jump through fire. I will rent a car and drive halfway across the country because my flight was canceled for Donald Trump. Where in there are their constituents? Because last time I checked, when you're a representative or a member of Congress or a senator and you take an oath, you take an oath to this country and you take an oath to your constituents, not to a president. But unfortunately, that's where their loyalties seem to lie.
All right, Congressman Jason Crow, Democrat.
I care about that woman's political views. I don't think she's MAGA, but she's representative of the people that will suffer. And the people that will suffer, guys, let's be clear. They are Republicans. They are Democrats. They are independents. They belong to the Libertarians, Greens, whatever. People from across the political spectrum will suffer and die or have that happen to their loved ones. This is what's happened. The Republicans are, again, they are admitting the bill sucks. This did not happen. When Biden passed the CHIPS bill, it mostly got praised. Now, there's always going to be disagreements. Biden's infrastructure bill, I don't think it was a bad bill. I think it could have been better if not for Manchin and Sinema. But like the bills were good and people were happy to vote for them. This, everyone hates it. Everyone hates it because it's for 100 people that live in glass gold towers and not for 330 million Americans.